Good morning, good afternoon, depending upon where you are. My name is Jeff Wicks, and I'm with NIA, and I'll be your moderator for this session. So I'd like to start off. I want to make sure we've got some housekeeping rules here, and this will be recorded. So please feel free, if you find it valuable or interesting, to reach out and do that. Did we just lose video? Help me out here. Okay, I guess we still got it. So if you've got questions, please use the chat in the right-hand side of the box. I'll be collecting those. We're going to be going through the full run of show, and then we'll go for questions. Probably be in the Zoom. There's a lot of content to cover here, and please don't hesitate to put those in. I'll catalog them and then get them to the right people as we move along. There is an opportunity for you to complete a questionnaire at the end, and we'd love for you to do that. And there would be a chance to be awarded a $25 discount for the 2023 Hot Water Solution or Hot Water Forum. So I'm going to first introduce our first speaker, Jesse Ander. Jesse Ander leads the energy efficiency strategy at Affinity Engineering. He works on a program strategy for utilities in the Northeast and West Coast. Before funding Affinity Engineering, he worked at Grundfos Pumps on their energy efficiency projects and market transformation strategy. He also worked for Eversource and for the Southern California Edison Corporation. Jesse has a BA in economics from UC Santa Barbara, as well as a JD from Boston College. Jesse will be speaking first for about 20 minutes, and then we'll get into the other speakers. So turn it over to you, Jesse. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey there, everybody. Good afternoon on the East. Good morning in the West. Thank you very much, Jeff. Great to be with everybody. Sad we can't be in person, but I think probably next year we'll be there, knock on wood. I'm just going to share my presentation here. We'll jump through it. I'll probably be a bit quick and economical with my time. Some of the other folks on the panel have really good presentations, so I'll do a little bit of table setting for some of that, and I think we'll kind of get into some interesting topics, and then we can obviously circle back if anyone has questions as we go. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully not screw up this process. Okay, looks like it's fired up. Okay, so I'm just going to fire through this. I'm in presentation mode now, so I actually can't see much of what's happening. So hopefully we are in good shape. Again, I'm going to go through this relatively economically, I think. So some quick introductory stuff here. So I'm going to talk through some work that we have done, research, and some concept testing for a gas utility in Southern California. We didn't ask for approval to use a logo, so you guys will have to figure out for yourselves what utility that is. It's not a secret. We don't have the logos in there. So the work that I want to share a little bit about is from some pandemic era problem solving, right? So there were a lot of utilities trying desperately to shuffle things, deal with weird circumstances. Some utility service territories had half of your restaurant customers go out of business, and all kinds of funny things happen in programs. And so that's what gave us the need to try to tap into some creativity here for this effort. So that's kind of the underlying factor there. So I'm going to talk you through sort of what we were trying to do, some of the things we tested, and some of the takeaways. Spoiler, if you're in this presentation, you know what it's about, workforce development. We weren't trying to put together a workforce development effort. We got there by accident because that was the best way to solve the problem that we were trying to solve. So we kind of, got there in a weird way. So that's kind of the story that I'll walk you through here. And with that, we'll kind of dive into some of the info. So the main idea that we were trying to solve here was how to effectively get incentives out to people that are eligible for them, and to keep the energy efficiency efforts going through the various programs and efforts, while in the midst of a situation where that was not the top priority for some folks. You know, with businesses were trying to stay afloat, didn't maybe have the same payback planning that you might otherwise have, because people weren't looking, you know, more than a couple months in the future sometimes. So we essentially asked ourselves how to do business essentially with the energy efficiency customers out there in the service territory, with a bit of a blank slate, right? Sort of a whiteboard there, that any options we'll at least consider. A lot of them were bad ideas that didn't work, right? But so the problem that we ended up trying to focus on there really was on hot water. So some of these dynamics here that we're looking at are really not due to the pandemic. These, you know, predate them. Nevertheless, they kind of, you know, these problems for us dovetailed. And so we focused in on this hot water heater segment, and highlighted a couple of dynamics that we didn't like, that we wanted to try to address, right? And so probably everyone in this is familiar with some of this, so I'm just going to breeze over some of this, and we can, I mean, talk in more detail if anybody wants to. But the vast majority of hot water heaters purchased in the United States are baseline low efficiency products. Right? It's been that way for a long time. It's a high volume, right? Very, very low penetration of high efficiency product there. And so if you ask yourself, what's the best way to change that, to transform that measure, get into a tricky situation, because the amount of energy savings that we have times the amount of incentive that we can justify per unit of savings doesn't give us nearly enough to attack the incremental costs of some of those upgrades. And that's especially the case when you're looking at the heat pump water heater side. So that gives us kind of our conditions that we are trying to work with here in the project that we got into, where you have the savings and cost dynamic give us a situation where we have very little money to work with as far as new creative supplemental efforts on top of the existing customer incentive program. And so that more or less is our foundation. Okay. So what we did from there is essentially ask ourselves, okay, let's say theoretically, I think we'll get to this later, but we said, let's say we had $100 per unit that we can justify adding to our existing efforts. We can either increase our incentive, which a lot of people did during the pandemic on a lot of measures, or we can do something else with that funding. And so again, this is, you know, this graphic here is going to be something everyone here is roughly familiar with. So we'll just kind of breeze over this and then kind of get a little bit into the detail. But the first question we asked ourselves was, where should we position ourselves? If we have the ability to try something different, to bring some extra funding to the table, what should we do? And so we first looked at, okay, let's think of our upstream, midstream, downstream layout. Like a lot of folks do, we kind of started with, oh, we should go upstream. The incremental cost of a measure is lower the farther up, the closer to the factory that you get, you know, all those same dynamics. And so we put this into a pyramid because there are more end users than there are manufacturers, and you know that trend goes kind of from step to step. So that's why the graphic kind of looks this way. I know there's nothing intended in the top or bottom of the pyramid. It's just a matter of volume within that layer.
Jesse, sorry to interrupt you. Your slides are not advancing. So
great. Okay.
There we go.
For that, yeah, maybe I'll just I suppose I'll just leave it out of presentation mode, just for the sake of making that work. Thank you for the heads up. So okay, so the graphic here is just a quick snapshot of it, kind of upstream, midstream, downstream layers. We ended up zooming in and coming up with 11 potential layers where some market influence might be possible. All right. And so this slide says this is fictional because pretty much no product would ever go through each of these layers. A hot water heater would go through a handful of them. A larger commercial product would go through some others. They're not all in play for every measure. So just to give a quick kind of snapshot, we actually went through this project looking at a bunch of different measure types and a bunch of different layers here. And so in this kind of research process, we essentially took a few interesting lessons from this. So if you go as far upstream as you can, picture the ECM fan motor supplier in a furnace measure, right? The furnace manufacturer just buys that motor from someone else. So they're a component supplier. And so, that component supplier would definitely love to get that ECM product into their OEM account with the furnace company, but they're so far upstream that they essentially have no ability to ensure that that product is going to get installed in a service territory. So we had to take that idea and say, well, that's not going to work out for us. So that's about as upstream as you can get. And then if you go essentially as far downstream as you can get, we had a relatively small amount of bonus money, if you want to call it that, to work with. And it was not enough to influence the end user and their purchasing decision. So that was another thing we thought, all right, well, that doesn't work either. So we went through each of these layers, talked to a bunch of, people in these layers, and had to take a bunch of interesting ideas we thought would be great and just had to toss them essentially. It's just not going to work right now. Maybe it needs more work. Maybe fundamentally it doesn't work, whatever reason. So that gets us to what we chose to zoom in on. And we'll kind of get back to the hot water heater concepts. And so we looked at the kind of supply chain options, the intervention ideas with the bonus incentive, and went through a few ideas here on the hot water heater side. So again, we talked about the component supplier, not enough influence that we could have that we could track all the way through to a service territory. That was kind of our limitation there. Again, at the bottom of the pyramid, energy user, the dollar amounts we had to offer didn't make enough of an impact. So we kind of focused in on the middle, your manufacturer, rep, wholesaler, installer, those layers, which I think probably everyone here is familiar with. And basically in our conversations, testing what people could do, we ended up with some of the similar issues that we kind of talked about there with the component supplier at the manufacturer level, right? Manufacturers of hot water heaters are generally pretty well aware of the various incentive programs, pretty eager to participate in a lot of those programs, are generally good partners and trade allies and all that. But we essentially had already kind of maximized all the participation we could get, and another couple of bucks essentially didn't move the needle very, very much. So that's kind of how we ended up with this idea of we need to target the installer layer of the supply chain and focus there. And so that's kind of what our research led us to. And again, like I said, we didn't intend to get to that. We actually intended to be farther upstream, and that's just not what was going to be the most effective. So to really summarize with that supply chain layer, we essentially had a bunch of ideas and actors that could not produce the market influence that we wanted. We had a bunch of options where the money wasn't enough to make an impact. And then we had another few options where the timing didn't work. We could influence a transaction way far ahead of the point where a customer is actually making a purchasing decision, but it was just too early. And so those were some of our kind of categories of issues where we had to kind of trim what we were trying to do. So that's kind of your snapshot of the research we did up and down the supply chain. Now, zooming into the work that we focused on with hot water heaters and targeting the installer, this is essentially what we put together. After we kind of tested all the options here. We took essentially a small again, we're calling it a bonus amount, increased incentive, trade ally bonuses. There are a lot of different ways that utilities kind of fund this, depending on the funding source is really where those labels, I think, come from. But essentially, bringing some extra incentive to the table. For this measure, the incentive didn't do a lot for the actual purchaser of the equipment, the end use customer. So that's why we targeted the contractor and installer. And here's essentially what we put together. Well, okay, we tried actually a few different things. I'm going to focus on the thing that was the most effective, and we can kind of zoom back at some of the things that didn't work as well. And a lot of these, for the sake of keeping the time on track, and because some of this data we're not authorized to share, a lot of this is just kind of at the conceptual level. If anybody wants to know more about this, just feel free to contact me or ask me in the Q&A afterwards. We can talk through this in more detail if anyone wants to do that. So what we essentially focused in on here is at the bottom of the slide. We put together a multiple layered effort to influence the installer. Okay, so our first challenge was, okay, we have a couple of bucks. What do we do with it to make a market impact? And we could have taken the effort to do more outreach, call contractors, pick up, and we did a lot of that. It didn't work very well because we essentially already had the optimized amount of market engagement, right? So if the utility calls more contractors and say, hey, I'm from the utility, we want to talk to you about our energy efficiency programs. A lot of contractors don't have time for that. They're not picking up that call. And the folks that do, maybe you could lump into the early adopters, and they're basically already participating. So we put a bunch of effort into essentially more outreach and didn't get very far with it. And could have been we weren't doing a good job of the outreach. We didn't test all that. That was just, we tried some of that and thought, that doesn't help us very much. So we ended up leaning on the manufacturers to essentially do that step for us. So in other words, the hot water heater manufacturers, probably a lot of whom are attending here today and have sponsored this, are really good at interacting with their installers, especially their top tier installers, their biggest contractor customers. And so we essentially realized, don't even bother trying to reinvent that wheel. They're better at it than we are. So we said, all right, great. We're not even going to try to do that. And so the manufacturers were able to recruit a large population of contractors who could receive the message, hey, these are all the programs. We have reason to believe some of these are being underutilized, and we've got some bonus for any contractors that can get customers to use the programs. So it's a relatively simple model. But that manufacturer and installer partnership was very strong and was able to be really productive in that space. Then the next thing we needed to figure out was how to get these trade allies, if you want to call them, as contractors, trained and participating. And our first idea was we'll roll out a bunch of trainings. We'll do it. And again, that ended up being a bit of a recreate the wheel situation.
Jess, this is Jeff. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
One, your slides are not advancing, and you're down to about 4 minutes left.
Great, thanks. So you're still not seeing any of this advance?
We're Resi hot water is what that was. And then we saw that. Keep going. And we saw this. We just thought if there's another, it sounded like you were talking to another slide.
No, still on this one.
Okay.
So perfect. No, thanks for the timing update there. So yeah, so kind of next point here is asking how to deploy our trainings to contractors. We essentially leaned on the existing training network that exists. So if a wholesaler sells a product and there's a new version of that product, those manufacturers, wholesalers are much better at training contractors than we are in the EE space. And I know a lot of folks might not want to hear that, but so that piece we essentially had to rely on wholesalers to run. So what we ended up with this effort was a few takeaways here that the manufacturers were the best at essentially promoting this effort. The wholesalers were the best at conducting the trainings. And so what we ended up finding for our trade ally engagement effort and really trying to bring them a bonus incentive was that what we were running was a spiff model that these manufacturers and wholesalers run. That's an existing model, not maybe traditional for the energy efficiency space, but so we essentially, copied that and rolled it out, more or less how a manufacturer would if they were trying to launch a new product, let's say. And so some of the, so those are the big takeaways that are on this slide. But some of the things that we learned were, one, the best way for us to influence that purchasing decision for a hot water heater was really through the installer. And the best way to do that was to treat that installer like a partner, meaning cutting them into the incentive process. So customer gets, say, $1,000 for a certain measure, and we want the installer to see some benefit from making that conversion. So we're essentially trying to loop them into the energy efficiency upgrade process, not treating them as a separate outside trade ally. So again, that's very simplistic, but simply bringing a couple of bucks to the table, allowing the contractor to see some benefit, gave us essentially a 5 times increase in the conversion rate to that high efficiency product over offering the same amount of money to the customer, because it was a very modest increase in the incentive on the customer side. So that essentially is the end result that that these slides are kind of leading up to, that I wanted to share. That again, we tried to reuse some of the existing assets that manufacturers, wholesalers have in order to engage with contractors to do some converting to high efficiency products, and using a very limited budget. That process got us, again, slightly less than 5 times the amount of energy savings per dollar, essentially, is how we measure that. So that is a very kind of high level description. Again, this is kind of a conceptual way to run through this. There's no data here because it's customer data that we couldn't share. But if anyone wants to ask questions or talk through this in more detail, feel free to let me know. Last thing here, I'll just put my contact info. Feel free to fire away any questions, and when we have the Q&A, happy to talk through any of this. And excited to see some of the next presentations. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Jesse, and appreciate the insights there. Always good to hear these stories from the field about how we engage with the marketplace. So our next speaker is going to be Bruce Manclark, who I work with quite closely here at NIA. He's a nationally recognized leader in residential consulting, working for Clear Result, and has done an extensive amount of technical training, implementation, and conservation programs, as well as quality control with his clients. And those include NIA, Bonneville Power Administration, Energy Trust of Oregon, and many others across the U.S. He has had in his past, he's run his own company and has a lot of direct experience with customer interaction, as well as working with energy efficiency programs. So, Bruce, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much.
Hopefully you are seeing my screen. Please confirm if you're seeing my screen, please.
We are seeing both the screen and your, yeah, there we go. That's the best view right there.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Bruce Manclark. As Jeff said, I work for Clear Result, and we'll get going here. This is a picture of me talking to a ductless heat pump compressor. I've got 44 years of experience trying to recruit different kinds of installers, which is another way of saying I'm old. We recruited them for weatherization programs, solar programs, HVAC programs, and then came the plumbers. The Northwest plumbing market, well, at least you go into certain things saying, boy, I'm going to talk to plumbers. And my assumption was it's going to be a lot like the HVAC market in the Northwest. And, that means that plumbers will respond to a premium product. They will make a higher margin by selling them. HVAC industry's got, like a 30-year history of doing this. And I assume that plumbers know how to sell efficiency. After all, they're moving tankless gas water heaters, and plumbers will embrace incentives. Was I right? Well, the short answer is not exactly, but I have learned a lot, and we have made, modest progress. So if there's one thing you take away from this presentation today, I would like you to take away that every market is not the same. There are different markets. This is the Pacific Northwest. If you know the Pacific Northwest, I live in the Columbia River Gorge. In addition to being a pretty place, it's pretty centrally located to drive to different places and talk to contractors. We have almost a 50% electric tank market. That means that 50% of the households out there have an electric tank, which is nationally quite large. A large percentage of those tanks are in garages, which means there's lots of space to install a heat pump water heater, and there's no stairs to go up and down. We have almost no boilers, and our best estimate of the number of replacement tank only for electric is 125,000 a year. That's a big number. Should be easy to engage plumbers, right? Well, let's talk about Maine. Okay, so Maine is about as far away as you can get from where I live and still stay in the continental U.S. They have extremely low levels of gas service, something less than 5%. And so you don't have a gas line running down, in front of everybody's home. And heat pump water heaters are competing against a pretty complicated product. That's like an oil or propane boiler. It could be a sidearm boiler. So if you switch that out, you get more space back in your basement. And everybody sort of, consumers sort of intuitively know that oil is really expensive, especially right now. And propane is also really expensive. They're both non-regulated fuels. And because it's sort of an hydronic area over there, HVAC contractors also plumb. And they're not used to, to never having something you don't need to go maintain. Out here in the Northwest, we have that standard electric water heater, which, you can pretty much install that and never go see it again until the day that it starts to leak. Okay, so these are the differences I found between the Northwest plumbing market and the Northwest HVAC market. So the HVAC market has got at least a 30-year history of selling efficiency, and the sales are conducted by non-professional staff. Not the plumbers are. HVAC, they have commissioned, successful HVAC professional salespeople. Those professional salespeople are the ones that prepare the bids. The plumbing industry, on the other hand, most bids are written by installers. And if I've learned one thing, it's that plumbers install what they understand and what they trust. Okay, they're not going to go out on a limb very often. And also, that standard electric tank it's very low maintenance, and service calls, they have a fear of service calls. As a contractor, a really fast way of losing money is to have service calls you don't get paid for. So the competition is against sort of the standard electric tank that you can sort of set it and forget it. And they also don't have a 40-year history of using utility incentives to help make sales. Largely through NIA's program, I think we uncovered what the perceived, and I really want to stress that word, perceived heat pump water heater barriers are. That fear of callbacks, again, it's a great way to lose money as a contractors. And they've also convinced themselves, even though they don't buy their pickups this way or they don't buy their tools this way, that customers only want the cheapest tank. And just getting them to offer something that isn't the bare minimum can be a challenge. Heat pump water heaters take too long to install. And, there's a few extra steps, but in a garage, those extra steps, really come down to doing something with the condensate. And I think sometimes when they go to training, they see all these sort of complicated solutions involving ductwork and venting and drilling 8-inch holes in the house. And, just if they're taking baby steps, focus first on the easy installs. We don't do refrigeration. And the answer is well, you don't have to do refrigeration. If something does go wrong with the refrigeration, usually the warranty covers, and it's less expensive just to swap out the tanks. And no one is asking for one, so why would I bid them? Well, nobody asks for a lot of things that they probably sell. And NIA last year did a very successful consumer awareness campaign, and we're starting to see customers say, hey, how about those heat pump water heaters? So to overcome that barrier, no one is asking for one. Maybe your program, should consider some consumer facing marketing. So in any market, chances are you've got the whales. And what I mean by whales, they're the ones that, they don't do a lot of plumbing. What they do is they go after tank replacements. And, typically they give a low quote over the phone. And when they show up, you realize, well, that didn't include the expansion tank that both the manufacturer and the local code official requires. And maybe they didn't, maybe there's 4 stairs and they only bid for 2 stairs. And so the price can often sort of increase once you get to the house. The pay structure that they have can be really fascinating. They might have a call center, and that call center, it's got a big list of names and a big screen TV. And there's a queue, and those people on the phone get paid a commission. And if it takes you 5 minutes to sell a replacement standard tank as compared to talking to somebody for 15 minutes on a heat pump water heater quote, and then the homeowner deciding not to, it goes against that. And also a lot of the whales sort of have subcontractors, and the way that pay structure is paid to that subcontractor, it really favors speed of installation. And the whales are definitely worth going after, but they're the hardest to convert. Tips for converting reluctant installers here. Chances are your first visit isn't going to get it done. And as the previous speaker mentioned, leverage the supply chain, find out what manufacturers are at, find out, do they have a relationship with, who at the front desk or who, their outside salesperson sells to them. They can help you. Training, the manufacturers do provide training. One of the combinations we have is we provide sort of, very general generic training about, the product as a whole. And then we like to co-present with the manufacturers, and they don't have to be Switzerland. They can kind of give their own tank a good promotion. Targeted promotions, help them recruit, whether it's a web campaign or what. One thing in our arsenal we found successful out here are the fixed price promotions. That's where they get to, advertise a fixed price. This is the all-in cost. And that's been very popular, and we've worked with distributors to get them the best price possible. We're going to jump to the pro deal, and this is under the NIA program. This is where an installer would get a free tank if they installed it in their house or an employee's house. And we tried to have a small event. I would show up with breakfast burritos, and we have 5 or 6 plumbers in their house installing it. And it's, sometimes I think it's the informal conversations rather than, say a strict technical training that sways more people. Anyway, my best tip is be useful. You might be the person that can explain the new energy code to them. You might be the person that can talk to the building inspector for them why they don't have to put a neutralizer on the condensate line of a water heater. But once you prove useful, you sort of, they trust you, and being useful is a good way to increase the trust level. And sometimes just simple little things, when you're recruiting a contractor, contractors that have box vans with lift gates don't have that big weight problem that people with, say, a small van do. Transfer pumps. It's amazing how many plumbers will just wait for that old tank to drain, and this really speeds up that process. And if you are doing basement installs, they definitely make stair climbing hand trucks that are a good investment. So what the converts have in common is that they actually understand there's a green market out there. I think sometimes we say, plumbers, they don't understand the green consumer. And you got to convince them that in every market out there, there is a green consumer, and that they will respond to that, improve the environment, slow global warming, etc. And also, they tend to have multiple business lines, whether it's irrigation, whether it's weatherization or HVAC. And another one is they typically have regular trainings, like once a week. And if you can get invited to those regular trainings, it's a good chance. And they tend to be a little more informal than some of the trainings that we have conducted. Tips for talking to potential installers. This was an example of this. We did this with a local sales rep. I gave a talk, and he got to talk about their product. And again, the informal setting, I think, is actually where you sway minds more than the strict technical trainings. Best clue I ever got was don't tell them how to run their business. If a contractor is running a $10 million plumbing business a year, you're not going to tell them much about their business, and they might be actually insulted. And understand they view programs as outsiders, and that's okay. Just understand it. We don't have 25 years, as they say, digging trenches and turning wrenches, right? So just understand that you're not going to be part of that inner circle right off the bat. And our industry is cursed with jargon, and we love using jargon, but stay away from jargon. We love the word market transformation. Midstream, downstream, it all sounds like ice cream to them. And, just don't serve them alphabet soup. Useful trips that lead to strong partnerships. Provide and arrange for training. And if you have new building codes, Washington State, where I live, had a drastically new building code that really promoted heat pump water heaters, and just helping them negotiate that new code proved very useful. And it's interesting, the wide range of pricing from a distributor to an installer. And, this gets into sort of like, kind of getting yourself plugged into different places in the distribution chain. Just, keep in mind that try to get them the best price possible. And, if you have a midstream incentive, make sure that it's being passed through, and all of it's being passed through. And, when it comes to incentive processing, plumbers typically have what I call the peanut allergy to paperwork. It's a pain. One of them told me, if I sell a standard tank, I cash the check. If I sell a heat pump water heater, well, I come back and then I have to spend time chasing the money after the sale. And so keep that paperwork as simple as possible. Help them figure out how to do it, and help them plan. This is a picture on the right. It was a multifamily that qualified for a permit by installing heat pump water heaters, and nobody thought about the differences. As you can see here, the building superintendent basically got the dimensions of the tank, put them in orange, put the duct adapter on it, and it simply wouldn't fit. There was also no provisions made for condensate or anything else. So if you do get wind of like a multifamily project or a large subdivision, see if you can insert yourself to make sure that, it goes well. Support the Breakaway company. Some individuals that, work for a larger company may see the opportunity to break away. We're fortunate enough to have a company out here in the Northwest called Great Northwest Install. And they have, basically built their business model around efficient water heating technology and working closely with utility and low-income programs. So if you see a breakaway company, help them, embrace them. Final thoughts, for most installers, transition to installing heat pump water heater, they have to think about their business model. They might not even be aware that their business model is always based on being the lowest bidder or based on not giving consumers options. So, if you can find a way to talk to them about their assumptions about how their business model works, that's good. And understand and be patient with their reluctance. You're not probably going to convince them on the first, go around. Help installers clear barriers, whether those barriers are paperwork related or install related. And, my best tip is find a way to be useful. And no matter what that takes, if it's the code, if it's negotiations, again, with that building inspector, be useful. That builds trust. And if you want to learn more, that's how you get a hold of me. And that concludes my talk for the day.
Great, thanks, Bruce. Always interesting, always good insights to what you're doing these days. And having spent some time with Bruce out in the field, he's the kind of guy who will say, "Yep, I've had grease under my nails," and he shows you. And the guys respect him a lot. So I would think if you're listening to anything that Bruce has had to say, you're gonna be wise to engage either someone like Bruce or get that perspective going on a regular basis. Plumbers are busy. They're trying to focus on their work. They want to get in, get out, get done. So our next speaker is Angie Ostashevsky. I hope I pronounced that right, Angie. And she works for Ameren, Illinois in their communications, charitable giving, and energy efficiency program. In her role there, she's an advisor and she supports residential programs and they manage market development initiatives. Outside of work, Angie is actively involved in the Center for Prevention of Abuse and the Illinois Central College Foundation Board, vice president of the Renaissance Park Community Association. She graduated #1 in her class at Bradley and holds an MBA and studied economics and sociology at Knox College. So I would really look forward to hearing what she's doing. She brings a great perspective, not only because of her work there at Ameren, but because she's very tied into some other groups and some at-risk areas. And this is an area that the energy efficiency field is suffering from not reaching out to low income and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So Angie, I'm going to turn it over to you. I want to remind everybody to make sure you're posting your questions. Although there's a technical problem, I'm not seeing any questions in here, but remind you that we will be having a Zoom meeting soon after Angie's finished, and that will be for about 20 minutes. That'll be posted again in the chat. Nick, if I can ask you to post it at the end of Angie's, that'd be great. So Angie, take it away. Thank you.
All right. I guess interrupt me if you can't hear me or see my slides. But I'm going to turn it over to my presentation. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I work for Ameren, Illinois, managing the Market Development Initiative, as well as a couple of other portions of our income qualified programs. And today I'll be talking to you about workforce development. So before I dive in, if you're not familiar with Ameren, Illinois, if you don't live in the non-Chicago part of the state, you probably haven't heard of us. So we're a delivery-only electric and natural gas utility, serving about 1.2 million electric customers and over 800,000 natural gas customers. Some unique things to know about our service territory that have a lot to do with workforce is it's 43,000 square miles. It is large. We've got about 3,000 employees working in a very, very large service territory that is a mix of urban, rural. We have some of the poorest zip codes in the nation within our service territory, as well as a lot of diversity in all the facets that you might think of, not just racially, gender, languages spoken. So a lot of different customers to reach. And one of the ways to reach those customers is through our contractors. So today I want to talk to you about how we implement workforce within our energy efficiency portfolio, and the area of the portfolio that's unique and most related to workforce is the Market Development Initiative. This was created in 2018 by our leadership, and it is essentially a way to make our portfolio more inclusive for folks that have not heard of it, not accessed it ever in the past. So it creates new economic and energy efficiency opportunities for individuals, and a lot of that is job creation or technical assistance to our contractors. So this is a regulated program, and we have 3 goals that we need to meet as a regulated program. The first is to increase that energy efficiency engagement by customers who have not participated in the past. The second is to increase the number of local diverse candidates filling untapped energy efficiency jobs. And the third is to expand or launch new local diverse energy efficiency businesses. And there's a lot of ways that we do this, but the first thing I want to say is workforce development within these programs is not filling jobs within the utility. We have over 1,000 contractors in our network. It's set up in a way that it's not kind of a locked system. Anyone can apply to become a program ally. There are a lot of different initiatives that anyone can join even mid-year. And so it's a very open kind of fluid. And so while we have 1,000 contractors, of course, those 1,000 are not equally active within our portfolio. Another way that we implement these programs is we partner with community-based organizations. So over the past 4 years, we've partnered with approximately 40 nonprofits, and that means staffing grants. We've placed interns. We've done job training, equipment grants. We've helped different nonprofits even shift to become contractors on our program, which has been really unique as it helps us to reach a whole new customer segment. I want to share probably our biggest success story in our portfolio. Jarvis Electric is a Hispanic-owned contractor, and they work in our small business initiative. And since joining our portfolio, they have grown their revenue to over $1 million. I mean, they are hustlers. They are the highest performers in the portfolio. And so we look at a contractor like that and we think, how can we replicate this so that others can really grow their revenue and see the benefit of working in our portfolio? And really the answer that we've boiled it down to over the past 4 years of implementing this program is to, one, highlight the benefits, but two, to reduce the barriers. And so I'm going to talk about that over the next couple of slides. So in the past, we have developed a lot of contractor development programs, and what those look like, it really varies. We've realized we needed kind of tiered opportunities based on what the contractor needs are. So I want to tell you about 3 that we implemented 2020 through 2021. The first is a diverse program ally incubator pilot. I might say program ally throughout this presentation. That is how we refer to our contractors in our programs. Essentially, we put together this incubator pilot to test out how we can increase participation from those allies who are aware of our program. They've enrolled to become a program ally, but they haven't actually completed projects. So we got that initial interest, and then something stopped them from participating more meaningfully or on an ongoing basis. So first we had to come up with the criteria. We looked at our data, we looked across our entire service territory, and we pulled out all of the diverse-owned allies who had no projects completed in the past 4 years. We then also checked, are they in good standing? Are they on probation? Is there a reason that they're not doing projects? And with that, we were left with a decent-sized group of allies that we started doing one-on-one outreach to recruit into this incubator pilot. Once they opted in, began participation. This was all conducted virtually, of course, pandemic style. And we had recurring meetings with them. It was a small cohort of 5 allies. We had veteran-owned, minority-owned, and women-owned participants. And so we would have different sessions with them. We would schedule it such that there was a webinar. Then there would be a debrief where they got to ask at a separate time, because of course it's hard to schedule to get all of the allies together at once. We had to be really mindful of their working hours, but having a debrief session. And then they would each also have a one-on-one check-in with our implementer, Walker Miller Energy Services, who ran this program for us. And the reason that we did that is, as you may know, not everyone is comfortable speaking up in a group meeting. Some people need time to process before they have questions, and some people are comfortable from the get-go. So that gave us a lot of different types of settings so that folks could really get whatever it is off their chest, because if they're leaving these sessions confused, we are not doing what we want to do. So what did these sessions cover? Diverse certification, help them put together a business growth plan, help them look at project financing, help them look at how to get their diverse business certification, connecting them with resources in their field, and then also a general overview of our portfolio, because it's complex. The paperwork is different by initiative. The contact is different by initiative. And so really mapping out for them, hey, if you're interested in multifamily, this is what the incentives look like. Here is your contact. And here's the first step if you want to get involved. It really laid out for them every opportunity they had to make money and what was the very first step to get started. So our goal was really to increase their knowledge, help them to better determine where they wanted to operate within our portfolio, really empower them to make the decisions that were best for their business and, of course, help us reach more customers. I'm really happy to share we concluded this first pilot in 2021, and we have seen great results so far. I would say one of the standouts for me is we worked with a fantastic business, Neil Thomas Plumbing. At the conclusion of this incubator pilot, he let us know he's very interested in multifamily. We got him connected to a project to replace ductless heat pumps, and he made $180,000 from one project. At which point I thought maybe I should enroll in this pilot going forward and become a contractor myself, because I mean, you can really change your life working in these programs, and he saw the value, and now he's an ongoing participant. And before, he was someone that we were aware of and we couldn't quite figure out how to engage. But that business growth plan in particular, and the connection to the program contact, being able to sit down and have someone map out how to participate that first time for you, it can really make the difference between being involved or getting busy. You know, folks in the trades get plenty of business. So the second one I want to share with you is the Minority Business Development Center Bootcamp. And now this is one that we created in partnership with a nonprofit. So one of those agencies I mentioned earlier, they were already doing business development programs. And so we worked with them to expand their model to be specific and offer a cohort for just energy efficiency. And the way that this differed from our incubator is that it was for people who had never heard of energy efficiency, no familiarity whatsoever, kind of a primer to create the foundation to begin work in the program. This is looking at, do you understand insurance? Do you understand accounting? It gives them access to QuickBooks, teaches them how to track all of their costs there, teaches them how to put together an invoice. We offer as well a back office answering service. So, you know, someone's launching their own business. It's just one guy and he's out in the field. So it's helpful to have someone just to take calls and take messages for you. And those little things can really make a big difference. We've had a lot of conversions from those allies who then enrolled in our program and are doing projects and different initiatives. The third one is a little bit interesting and a bit different, is Diverse Power Solutions. This was a program ally training specifically for our small business program. And it was run by Jarvis Electric, our most successful ally. So he actually said, I'm doing great. What I can do is train your other allies. I can go out to them, go with them to a project, walk them through it, show them how to do it. And after I do a couple with them, they will be self-sufficient. He has figured out his secret sauce. And because, you know, he's not going to cover our entire service territory, there's plenty of opportunity to go around. We put together this cohort and it was hugely successful. And so I bring up all of these to show you that not everyone has the same needs. And so the more flexible you can be, the more successful that outreach to your allies, the more success you'll have there. All right, next slide. I want to call out one other initiative because I think it served as a great entry-level opportunity to new contractors in our portfolio, and that's our Smart Savers initiative. It's essentially a way that customers in qualifying zip codes can receive a free smart thermostat. They can opt to install it themselves, or they can opt to have a contractor come out and install it for them. For those contractors, we pay them $165 per install. So that's a kind of above market rate. They're very well compensated for participating in the program, and it makes accessing a measure like a smart thermostat much easier. And I'm bringing this up, I know it has nothing to do with water, but if you think about your portfolio and you look at the measures available, if you have something in your portfolio like this where it's literally one measure, the paperwork is simple, it's easy for the customer, it's easy for the contractor, that can be your starting opportunity that then contractors can grow from and participate in some of those more complex programs. And in terms of success, we raised our diverse spend. This initiative has the highest diverse spend across our entire portfolio. Over 50% of our spend was with local and diverse program allies. And even we had 2 nonprofit participants by the end of 2021. It says 1 here, but we had 1 join late in the game. So again, if you can think of, is there an entry-level opportunity for contractors that can be very beneficial? I want to just touch one more time on the impact this can have. So in the Market Development Initiative, we have these incubator programs. We also created a diverse vendor database. So anytime we encounter a potential vendor that we could work with on our program, we log them and share this database of vendors with all of our implementation partners so that as they have a new opportunity for procurement or they're building out a contractor network for an initiative, we have a central resource that they can pull from and make it easier to find local vendors to partner with. You can see that in our last energy efficiency plan, 2018 through 2021, we had steady growth for both our spend with diverse vendors and our spend with diverse contractors. And I'm a visual person, so right here you can see Calvin Pitts. He actually started with us as a nonprofit partner, expanded from workforce training into wanting to become a program ally himself. And last year, he became one of our dedicated contractors for knob and tube remediation. And because he participated in one of our incubators, he expressed that interest. We looked at his business, provided him with staffing and equipment grants to remove some of those barriers. It resulted in $125,000 of additional revenue for him just from knob and tube projects in the second half of 2021. And a happy customer in that photo as well. I want to end with kind of a non-traditional vendor partnership since it's just, I think I haven't heard of one like this, but when you're also looking at diversifying your vendor base, look at vendor types that you wouldn't normally work with. And so the example I have here is the Peoria Guild of Black Artists. They're an alliance of artists in the Peoria community, and they banded together basically to create more opportunities to exhibit their work, elevate their collective voices, and to bring more attention to their artwork. And so you might look at that and think, I have no idea what that group would do with an energy efficiency portfolio, but we created a partnership with them starting in 2020, continuing today, where they looked at all of our marketing materials and they started to provide us new custom imagery to use in our marketing, using painting as a medium, photography, graphic design, sketching, everything, lots of things that you would never normally see in energy efficiency marketing materials. And we loved the concepts they provided to us so much. It was just such a different way to resonate with customers that we also created a project with them that's in progress right now, where we are putting in sustainability themed murals throughout our service territory. It's a permanent fixture. It's not like a billboard. It's really an investment in the community. And it's just another way to, one, show, everyone is the customer of the utility. We are integrated with our customers. We live where they live. And just another way to bring up that conversation and interest in the programs. And so with that, I forgot to put my contact information in a slide, but I'll be happy to share it when we get to Q&A. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Angie Ostaszewski on LinkedIn. So you can find me there, or you can look up additional information on our programs at AmerinIllinoisSavings.com/MDI. Thank you so much.
Angie, nice work. Great insights. And it's always good to get different slices of what we're doing in the market. So great diversity there in so many different ways. So at this point, I think we're going to break and go to the Zoom portion of this, and I'll be there to moderate. They should be showing up. Yep, there's the link. And just paste that in. I don't think there's a passcode for participants, but if you're one of the speakers, you do need to put your passcode in there, and we will transfer over there. So I think Nick will be here for a little longer to help people get migrated over there, and then I'll go open up the Zoom call now. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We look forward to connecting in the next part of the session. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.